All right, there we go. Let's get our Facebook groups in here before we start the show on this fine Thursday morning. We got our spinning wheels going, 1 and 2. All right. Welcome in, welcome in. It is the 8th of February, Thursday morning. It's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. Scott, we made it. You're kind of feeling a little tired. I'm feeling a little tired, but we're going to still get that show out there for you guys. I can see that you got the Falcons mailbox in the background.
Nope,
But
got to switch it. See, that's how I'm feeling today.
What day is it? No, it's
But thank you to see. This is where this came from.
Albert and Michelle Knoppers.
Albert and Michelle Knoppers. So that was very cool of them to send that to me.
Yeah, there you go. Very cool.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool that they did that for me. I think it's pretty awesome.
It is awesome. And we're here Thursday talking a little bit more draft. Obviously, a lot of Super Bowl stuff going on right now, but I am so disenfranchised by the Super Bowl, so tired of the Chiefs that we're just going to keep looking forward, not inward, not current, but forward with the draft. Maybe we'll have some reflection closer to this after the Super Bowl. But for now, excited about the draft and everything to look forward to. Let's say hello to everybody in the chat here today. Jeremy Sean says, morning, boys. I'm thinking about quarterback at most likely at 12. Defensive tackle or offensive tackle too. So he's saying tier 1 would be quarterback, tier 2 would be defensive tackle and offensive tackle. Depends how the board falls. Also, he says there's a few edge rushers that might be attractive. Yeah, we'll get into it. US Dave says that's what makes the most sense, so I don't see it playing out that way. Of course, love that. We got Gatorade Gaming saying, hello, Nick and Scott. What's good, Broncos country? We are just living life, trying to survive. Gatorade Gaming also says we need beef on the defensive line. Absolutely. I mean, Scott, you can go back to June last year, and we're both like going over the depth chart for the first time being like, oh my God, this is terrible.
Yeah, you did that for me. You're like, hey, have you really, we were live and that was the first time. So you got like a gut reaction on that. You're like, have you really looked at this defensive line? I'm like, oh my. You're like, yeah. Yeah, I was with you on that. The Broncos for breakfast is coffee, 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 but it's also trenches, trenches, trenches. And the Broncos just went into 2023 undermanned on the defensive line in those that 3-man front. They were just light, and really ineffective. And it went again. I hate to keep picking on him, but when Jonathan Harris is one of your starters, you're in trouble. That's not a good thing. I was ready to cut him 2 years ago in the preseason, let alone have him be one of your starters. And to be fair, as the season played on, you saw him getting less and less and less. But it's not like another 300-pounder was coming in that you drafted and was just taking over a spot. You were just having to reshuffle your lineup and how things were playing out and getting lighter in the box. You need some beef. And Gatorade Gaming, the good thing I think about that is you can find those guys 3rd, 4th round that can come in and really help you.
And in free agency every year, there's always veterans on the tail end that can come in for 1 or 2 year contract that can help that room. And to be fair to Mike Purcell, Jonathan Harris, DJ Jones, they're all, I think, rosterable guys who can play good roles, but I think they're all should be your 5th or 4th best option, where they're like the Broncos' 2nd or 3rd on the interior defensive line. So
and then the one of the guys you were counting on had a really poor year. DJ Jones should have been a guy that you could build around. It's like, okay, well, we're solid right in the middle. Now we flank him with Zach Allen, and we'll limit. We'll work around. We'll shade stuff over. We'll pinch guys in around Jonathan Harris when we have to. But then DJ Jones really had trouble, and maybe he's definitely. I won't even say maybe. He's more of a complimentary guy. I want him as a 4-3 defensive tackle. I don't want him head up over the center where he's taking on double teams every time. I want him sliding, one way or the other. But the DL is big. Gatorade Gaming. I agree for sure. And I was a little surprised that it wasn't addressed more often during the season. It's like, oh, we plucked this 320-pound guy off of so-and-so's practice squad just to try and get more bodies in there.
They did bring in Rashard Lawrence, I think.
But it wasn't.
At the end of the season
every week.
Yeah, it was not good. And the other thing is the edge rusher room. No real difference makers there. You got a lot of good complementary pieces, but heck, I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos ended up trading one of those final year contract guys in Baron Browning or Jonathan Cooper, just to reset the contracts there and see what you can get. And they definitely need help up front. We got Gary Palmer saying, good morning, Nick and Scott. If tight end from Georgia, Brock Bowers, is available at 12, I would take him. He is best player available. Scott, you might be a little. I'm curious your perspective on this because you have seen the fallout of taking a tight end that doesn't work out and with a top pick. But 12 is obviously different than 4, and Bowers is a different player than Kyle Pitts. So, any thoughts on Bowers at 12?
I like it, and I'm going to start saying I would just ask this of you, Nick. When we say BPA, let's just start saying best prospect available. Let's see if we can make that a thing. Best
Yeah.
player sounds so definitive, like, oh, he's the best player available. Well, he probably won't be, but prospect gives you that doubt that we understand that he's still a prospect and there's doubt involved. Best prospect available. Would I take him at 12? Yeah, I would. I would. And I think there's a big difference between 4 and 12. And again, where you feel about your quarterbacks, because, I'm starting, the more I think about it, I'm just like, who is the most of, other than the top 3 quarterbacks, who is the most plug and play ready of the quarterbacks that you could come in and start with right away? And for me, that's Bo Nix.
For sure, Bo
I think
Nix.
he's the most pro ready guy. And do I want him at 12 to come in and start competing right away? And does that give more of a spark for Broncos country? And what good is, I won't say what good, because Jarrett Stidham's not a bad quarterback, but he'd be a bottom 3rd starter in the NFL. Does Brock Bowers help him? Because it is a complementary position. What good is a pass catcher going to be for me if I don't have the quarterback? Well, maybe I can get the quarterback next year. And then I've got this weapon, this, Travis Kelce-esque type of weapon. I mean, he's a phenomenal. He's arguably the best player in this draft, best college player in this draft. So I could see him at 12. I could make a really, really strong argument to Broncos country for why this was a good pick.
Yeah, the big thing with me with Bowers is he's not the exact same type of player as Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is a little bit more of a long strider, more of an X receiver to the tight end spot, where Bowers is more of your F tight end type. He's a little bit smaller. He plays a lot of slot. He also plays a lot of H back, and there's a lot of good reps there in line. He's been the highest yak tight end 3 years in a row, which matters to me, especially if you're getting to the checkdowns and working tight end screens or anything. Somebody who can do stuff after the catch. I mean, he's not fully a tight end. He's not fully a slot, but he's really twitchy, good at the catch point. After the catch, despite being small for the tight end position, really blocks pretty darn well. So I don't see him being similar to Kyle Pitts. And also, I think the conversation between pick 4 and pick 12 is drastic as well. Think about how much it would cost to move up from pick 12 to pick 4. There's a big value difference there. So I'm not against it. One big negative for taking Bowers at 12 is that you take him and he ends up being one of the top 6 highest paid tight ends in football out of the gate, where if you take an edge rusher, a wide receiver, a tackle, a quarterback, they're going to be one of like the 30th to 40th highest paid player. And for a team that is as up against it in cap issues as the Broncos are, you're not going to get as much financial benefit if he's just a average hit at the position. He needs to end up being a perennial Pro Bowler to probably justify that 12th overall pick. But if you believe in him, at the end of the day, you just got to get good players and difference makers. So if you believe in him, then that doesn't matter. But it needs to be part of the overall consideration when you take a non-premium position that early in the first round.
Yeah, and at 12, I'm okay with it. I wouldn't be surprised if he was higher than that. How is Pitts working out for Atlanta? Not great. It may have gotten Arthur Smith fired, but he was a Pro Bowler his first year and had the second most yardage ever when he had an accurate quarterback with Matt Ryan, and then he got hurt. But he wasn't playing. He got hurt late in his second season. But he had Marcus Mariota, who wasn't a very accurate quarterback. There's questions about his work ethic that I don't think you're going to have with Brock Bowers. So he's got 2 more years of control. But that team wasn't set up to take advantage of a pass catching tight end. You might want to say the same thing, but I'd say the Broncos offense is in considerably better position right now, Broncos period, than the Falcons were 2 years ago. It was a really stupid pick 2 years ago for trying to win any games in the next 3 years, and it cost Arthur Smith his job.
I haven't heard you say that the Pitts pick cost Arthur Smith his job, so that'll be interesting. Maybe.
You've heard me say that their very first decision to not go quarterback at number 4 and not taking Justin Fields and it cost their job. You say, well, Scott, Justin Fields, they might not have been any better. Okay, that I'll listen to that. I will.
Mhm.
But if you had gone quarterback at 4, you still, if you lose all those games and you miss, Arthur Smith might get another shot with another quarterback. Say, okay, well, they took a shot here at the quarterback and they miss. Let's give them a shot with another quarterback. Instead, he was so arrogant. He's like, we can do it with any quarterback. Passed on quarterback, then went to Mariota, then put all his eggs in a 3rd-round pick. And that decision to bypass the quarterback ended up costing him his job, in my opinion. I think he would have gotten a mulligan, one more year, if he had taken Justin Fields. And they were, let's say we need to get another quarterback now. That's fine. I think he would have gotten one more year if they had taken a shot at a quarterback.
Interesting. We'll see what happens here with the Falcons. And, of course, Kevin Gray coming in and says, morning, Nick and Scott. Big Mile High salute. Zack Powers comes in and says, is everyone becoming bored with Florida State edge rusher Jared Verse, since we've talked about him for 2 years now? I feel like he's the only 3-down edge who can play outside linebacker and defensive end. I think that you can get some Dallas Turner still defensive end stuff there. I know he's lighter, but there's going to be certain packages where you can do that. I think he's a much more staunch, is that the right word? Edge setter than, like, even though he is smaller, than a Nick Bonito, even than a Baron Browning. I think Cooper can do some good stuff there, but he is definitely more of a, 2-point stance, wide pass rusher, linebacker, edge rusher type. But I think he's salty enough and physically gifted enough where he can sit there and play the edge as well, just because he brings so much, the speed to power, the pop that he has behind his hands when he gets out of his stance, despite being, a 240, 250 pound edge rusher, is pretty good. So I think he's one as well. But yeah, Jared Verse, big thing with him is I think he's going to be a really good, consistent, high energy player. He's got no bend, Scott. He's got no flexion. He can't really turn that corner very well. And the guys who, you can have a lot of value with the guys who aren't really benders, because they can still create disruption, but they have a hard time finishing plays a lot. And we see it. It's that last step, that bend, that ability to get around that arc is the difference between good and disruptive to perennial Pro Bowl and greater a lot of the time.
Well, you know who I never get bored with, Nick, is Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL. They know football fans love a great game and a great deal. So they're tossing out a challenge and calling it Pick 6 for slices and sticks. If there's a Pick 6 during Super Bowl 58, fans who accepted the challenge on the Little Caesars app will get a free slices and sticks, period.
Yeah, we've partnered with NFL legend, longtime Tampa Bay Buccaneer Derek Brooks, because he knows all about the pick 6, having returned one during Super Bowl 37 against the Rat Bag Raiders, as my dad likes to call them. The play led to a 44-yard touchdown and a win for the Buccaneers. So accept the challenge today with the app and win some pizza.
Pizza, Kevin Gray. There's a good question. Should you have drafted Justin Fields instead of PS2? Again, if you had, you would be in a better position now than where you are.
Just because the Russell Wilson
the Russell Wilson trade. If you had drafted Justin Fields, you wouldn't have sent all of those picks and the contract to Russell Wilson. Would not have happened. Would you have won any more games? Maybe, maybe not. You haven't won enough anyway. This is a conversation that Nick and I have had a bunch of times about the value of PS2 and the value of a corner. And PS2's had 3 different coaches, so as good as he's been, he hasn't really elevated the Broncos, as Nick has started saying, which I like. I'm going to start crediting him and saying is the corner's kind of a closer. He's kind of the cherry on top and not necessarily a building block. One of the differences is Pat Surtain. Let's throw that out of there because that's a whole butterfly effect thing. If that happens, is Pat Surtain still has a lot of value. You can trade his value has actually gone up. Yeah. You could trade him for higher than the equivalent of the number 9, I believe, is where you took him. You could trade him for more than a 9. You could get a first round. You could get 2 first rounders out of it.
Or it would be 9, but you've already used 3 years of control, which is
but it was a good pick. We talk about, get good players, keep doing that. Pat Surtain was a good pick. The butterfly effect of would you have been better off if you took Justin Fields? Yes. Let's say he works out in Denver. But if he doesn't work out in Denver, you wouldn't have made that trade. You wouldn't have done that. And that trade and all of the players and resources and everything, you can use the whole word capital on this one, Nick. I'm just fine with it.
Yeah.
because it's players and money and draft picks, all of those resources that went into getting Russell Wilson instead of maybe sticking a year with Justin Fields have hurt your team more than if Justin Fields was just a flat out bust and you didn't have Pat Surtain.
You definitely would be in a better position going forward,
Right.
because you'd have significantly more flexibility and avenues to add to the team where you're up against it with the Russell Wilson trade. And I keep saying it on here. It's not just that the Broncos, are lacking draft picks this season or the draft or the salary cap, but you're missing 2 years of premium picks that are typically guys that are becoming the lifeblood of your team at this point. So, top 100 picks, you gave up 4 of them, 5, 6. I mean, the Sean Payton stuff too. So you're missing a lot of what really makes good teams in the NFL. Now, there are exceptions, of course. The Rams have been able to. They're going to make their first round pick since they took Jared Goff, which is unbelievable. That's really an exception, though. It's kind of like Brock Purdy or Tom Brady, being the day 3 draft picks at quarterback and being good. That's good for them. Not typically how it's done. So, I don't know. It's tough for the Broncos, no doubt. Michael Ronquillo says, "Good evening, Nick and Scott." Good evening. Oh man, I knew I slept in, but I don't know about that. He said, "Good evening, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos!" Thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate you coming in. We also got Ruben says, "Field stinks, so stop. Look at his number. He is not good." We're not disputing that. It's the butterfly
You're
effect.
missing the point. That's not the point. The fact is if let's take this one more step. Okay, he stunk. And now you'd be in the top 3 again after 3 years of him and have a top 3 pick. And you'd have a team that would have multiple first round picks and a buttload of salary cap space. Would you be better off right now? So it's like, because, Zach says the defense would have been much worse with Pat Surtain if he wasn't there. Yeah, of course. So what? What have you won in the 3 years with Pat Surtain? What if you had been worse? Your team would have been better off with Justin Fields because of the effect that would have happened down the line. You wouldn't have traded for Russell Wilson. That's the point. That's the point. So
you would have been
you'd be
worse
better
the
off
last
if
2
you hadn't
years.
traded Russell Wilson, even if you didn't have Fields or Surtain. That's the point.
Yeah. I think it's pretty easy to say that you would have been worse the last 2 years on the field, but your prognosis for going forward from this exact moment in time would be significantly better. I think that
Maybe it wouldn't worse. Think of the players I still would have had. And the
Yeah,
draft
true.
picks I would have had to be able to put around and build more of a team.
That's true. You never know.
You never
But
know. But the point is forget it. Let's just assume you would have been worse. You'd be
Yeah.
in a better spot right this second if you had drafted Justin Fields.
very, very possible.
So I'm not debating who the better player was or who the better prospect was. It's beside the point. That has nothing to do with this discussion. Pat Surtain, like I said, Pat Surtain's value has actually gone up since he was drafted. Fields hasn't. The Bears spent 2 first-round picks on him, I believe, and then maybe even a little more to trade up and get him. So, his value has gone way down. That's not the point. And going back and revisiting all this stuff that doesn't matter is kind of a waste of time anyway.
Yeah. And maybe if you have Justin Fields, you bring in a different coach than Sean Payton, keep another first-round pick. Maybe you go after Shane Steichen, who's been awesome with the Colts after one season. I mean, who knows? It is the butterfly effect. Fun to get into hypotheticals, though, as we are very much in the offseason. JD801 says, "Morning Broncos fam, Cheyenne, Wyoming in the house. Good to see you." We got David Youngkin saying 2026 before we're competitive. We'll see. We got Kayleon Green saying, "Yo, hope you're doing well."
Hey, yo.
Zack Powers says, "Is Chubb a decent comparison to Verse?" I think Chubb was a much better prospect than Verse overall. More developed with his hands. I think he had more flexibility. Verse reminds me a little bit more of maybe a lesser Ryan Kerrigan, just because I don't think he is as inevitable as Ryan Kerrigan, or not Ryan Kerrigan. My guy George Karlaftis, kind of power based oriented. I mean, just an explosive player when he makes contact with guys, but not a lot of bend, and not the most lateral agility there, but can be a good player. And I think that's probably the range. I think probably you're talking 15 to 20s where he probably should come off the board, but you never know. It's a not a good defensive class this year at the top, at least. So somebody might be reaching a bit on an edge. Lawrence Rivera says the Broncos need to work on consistency by sticking with players for the long run to develop with the team. I mean, They kind of have done that with a lot of guys, right? That's one of the things that we're going to have to maybe pull off the Band-Aid. I mean, Simmons has been here for a lot of years. Bowles has been here for a lot of years. Sutton's been here for a lot of years. We'll see if those guys are here much longer. I mean, obviously the Broncos, it's probably best for them in terms of value if they can work out a new deal for a lot of those guys, because you're probably not going to get massive trade influx back, but that means the players have to accept it. Maybe they don't want to. So it's going to be interesting about sticking with players for the long run, the ones that have been here already.
Every team turns over about a third of their roster every year. It's contracts, it's draft picks, it's salary cap, it's talent. So if I've got a guy that's about average in his fourth year and I can replace him with a guy that's about average in the 6th round, guess what? That 6th round guy's coming in and taking a spot. So, the competitive balance is going to make sure that you are moving guys around constantly. So, I don't think the Broncos have done anything any worse or better about sticking with players. They just, and again, I think there's this fallacy that on a long enough timeline, everybody is going to become who you think they can. Man, that's a bad way to think. I mean, we see it, I guess, probably the most with, the quarterback position. Well, if they'd only stuck with Drew Lock, he would have become this. Well, how can you say that? Most guys aren't good enough. Most guys never become this guy. There's 15 good quarterbacks in the NFL out of 10 that get drafted every year. In the last 5 years, we're talking 60, 70 quarterbacks that just flat out aren't good enough. Putting them on a longer timeline doesn't mean they're going to jump into this top 15 echelon. They don't have it. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not that easy, dude.
No, I think there's that false belief that, the more starts, players deserve chances. That's one. That's a false belief, in my opinion. Also, that progression is linear. The more you have, the better you get. No, that's some guys take jumps up immediately. Some guys have a good season and then fall back. Progression is anything but linear, and sometimes there is not progression at all. A lot of guys, especially if they've had a lot of snaps in the league or in college or whatever, kind of maybe closer to their ceiling. And a lot of it also is fit from personnel to scheme. That matters so much. So it's a tough evaluation. David Carmelo come in and says, do you think Broncos prefer a non-alt offensive tackle over Fashanu? I haven't heard anything in that regard. So he's talking about the offensive tackles that might be there for the Broncos at 12. Seems like the NFL draft media has Joe Alt definitely out of the range for the Broncos. But Fashanu seems to be falling a bit. Fuaga seems to be a potential option there. And you still have the very talented options of Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, J.C. Latham from Alabama, and Amarius Mims from Georgia, as well as options for the Broncos if you're looking offensive tackle. I think probably they'd have Fashanu the highest, but you never know. I mean, if you're looking for a little bit more positional versatility and, core strength and the ability to shock guys with power, maybe you prefer a Latham or a Fuaga over Fashanu. If you want that pure pass protector left tackle type, then you probably like Fashanu. But there's so many different flavors at offensive tackle in this class. It's a deep one, too. There's going to be a lot of guys in the top 60, I think, come off the board. I wouldn't be surprised, Scott, if we had 10 offensive tackles in the first 60 picks in this one. But I think it does fall off pretty drastically after there's like a line and probably at about 60, 70 where it falls off. But for the Broncos, I mean, it could be a number of guys. I have heard that the Jets really love Fuaga from Oregon State. So we'll see if that ends up being true in the end. It's that time of year where, doubt everything. But Broncos, a lot of questions, a lot of options if they do want an offensive tackle. And if that becomes much more of an amplified question if they do end up moving from Garrett Bowles, which there has been gaining steam out of Dove Valley. That's a possibility.
Yeah, it makes, again, there's so many questions in here. Because I want to hit on this with David, what he says. David, thank you for the super chat, my friend. Was the early hype for the Penn State guys, a little premature? Because it seems like all three of them, it's like, oh, they're really falling. Well, maybe they were just elevated too quickly. And we're talking about offensive tackle Fashanu. We're talking about edge Chop Robinson. We're talking about cornerback Caleb King.
I think Chop's going to go to the combine. Kalen. K-A-L-E-N.
Okay, Kalen King. We're talking about those three guys who were oh, super high, they're really falling. Well, maybe they were just early.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were just early to the evaluation process, and now they're settling back into where they belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, very possible. I think that Scott, I went back and watched it. Who's the other edge rusher that was at the Senior Bowl from Penn State? I see the tools there for that guy, man.
Adisa?
Yeah, Isaac Adisa.
Adisa Isaac?
Yeah, I know that he wasn't the most refined at the Senior Bowl, but he's got some juice and measurables to him.
Yeah, Adisa Isaac. He was 6'4" and 5'8", 250 pounds, 34-inch arms.
I saw
Adisa
some pretty
Isaac,
good
number
reps from
20.
him. I was impressed by him. I also think that he and Chop Robinson are going to have awesome combines, so I wouldn't be shocked at all if Chop goes somewhere in the top 25 and Isaac goes somewhere in the top 50. But I don't know how we got down the Penn State edge rusher path here, but we got
just,
Lawrence.
talking just Penn State. I brought that back into with those guys because I remember you talking about them early, and it's like, oh, they're really falling. What happened? Well, maybe they just hit the board early. That's all. I had to deal with that all the time in recruiting, and I actually started doing percentages. It's like, well, we've got 300 guys ranked, and he was the 5th. Well, now we've got 2,000 guys ranked, and he's the 15th. But percentage-wise, he's now in the top. Instead of the top third with only 15 guys at his position ranked, he's in the top 5%, and he's actually worth more. It doesn't quite work like that with NFL draft, but maybe he was just early to the board. And I wanted to roll this into Lawrence's stars comment. He says Sean would love to tank for picks, and this kind of goes back to the discussion we were having about where would you be? Where would you be if you didn't go on that 6-1 run? Was that bad for the team? Because we were at the point, remember, I've said it a bunch of times after the Jets game, I was ready to burn the whole thing down. Would you have been better off if you had? Right now, if you had moved Bowles, if you'd moved Simmons, and you got 4 more draft picks and you've already cleared the salary cap room, or are you now in that same position where maybe not? We're kind of in that. I feel like we're a little bit in that limbo phase where you're not quite sure into purgatory. We're in team building purgatory right now, Nick.
I mean, we might be in team building hell considering the cap and draft picks and lack of young emerging players on the roster.
Yeah, but you're an 8-9 team with a decent squad, and you can keep the base of that squad and still add to it. But is it going to be enough while those guys are still good, or do you again?
I don't think you can keep the base. I don't think you can because of the cap issues that you're up against. You're going to have to take away somehow. You're going to be paying Russell Wilson the same amount to be here or not be here. So I don't know if it is the same. In the end, I also think, again, I've said it on here, I think that 8 wins was a little bit fortunate last season. I think that was a 6-win team that coached, turnover lucked, injury lucked their way to 2 more wins, in my opinion. Luck. It's just sometimes that's the game of football, right? Broncos don't win the Super Bowl without a little bit of luck, right? When the back 8 years ago, whatever it was. I don't know. I don't think Sean could tank for picks. I don't think that's in his blood. I also don't know fully, Scott. I agree with you in terms of the overall avenues and flexibility to build the team, but I do think there is something about a new coach coming in and establishing himself and getting belief in his players and coaches. And okay, what we do here works, the buy-in. So I don't really believe in momentum carrying over year to year, but with a new coaching staff being established, if the team would have, absolutely stunk this last year after, tearing it down, and let's say you end up with the 6th pick, you still and you still can't trade up because the teams in the top 3 don't want to move down. Does that really improve you that much? I mean, you'd have a better pick, you'd have a better chance at a blue chipper, no doubt. But again, 6 to 12, I think if you look historically, probably not a huge difference versus, top 3 to 12. So I don't know how that plays out, but certainly a possibility that they would be in a better position.
When we talk about trades, Michael Ronquillo comes in. He says, I think Justin Simmons is worth a 2nd-round pick. I don't. I think he's worth more of a 4th or a 5th. However, if you start trading Justin Simmons, this is a building point that I've wanted to make, and I don't think we've had a chance to really talk about it here, Nick. I made it with Zach on Sunday. I kind of had an epiphany that he's probably worth a 4th and a 5th if you were to trade him straight up because of his contract. 1 year left on his deal, and it's expensive. It's a big money deal. But if you start unloading guys like Justin Simmons, like Garrett Bowles, like Courtland Sutton, that is a signal to the rest of the NFL that we are rebuilding. And therefore, the salary cap, available salary cap space doesn't matter. because I'm not going to be able to sign top tier building block free agents anyway, not without spending over the cap, spending more than market value. I'd be spending a premium. There's no reason to spend a premium on guys in a rebuild. So why not take that money, trade? Okay, Justin Simmons is worth a fourth or a fifth because his contract is so expensive. Okay, well, we're going to send you Justin Simmons and we're going to pick up $10 million of his contract. We want a second back. So it's not just Justin Simmons because, okay, what's he worth as a player to a team that's on the verge of becoming something like the Detroit Lions? They could be a safety away from a Super Bowl. They would be worth paying a premium. But you're going to have to send them some money to buy that pick up or to buy another pick. Here's a fourth and a fifth. You just bought one. So we talk about salary cap relief all the time, but if you start unloading these guys, you don't need salary cap relief because you're not going to be able to spend on free agents anyway, Nick.
The one pushback I would have on that is that you can roll over cap. So if you create a lot of space and the Russell Wilson dead cap hit for 2025 is going to be what, 45,
Yep.
48 million?
Nick, that's an excellent point that I kind of forget about when I'm talking about this. But would you be better off rolling cap over, or would you be better off getting more picks? It's a decision you'd have to make, or a combination of both.
Yep.
I'll pick up $5 million, you throw me a fifth. I'll pick up 10, you throw me a third.
So is it more important to give yourself flexibility to add free agents a year from now? Or is it more important to get draft picks and how much higher are you getting picks for this season? That's that delicate balance where it's going to be tough, no doubt. It's we got BLD coming in, says the top of the offensive lineman in the draft worth the 12th pick. Yes. Top guy is not going to be there on the offensive line. They'll go.
How many offensive linemen go before 12? Do you think 2?
I would set the over under at 1.5.
Okay.
So I think I would probably take the over on that too. I don't think it'll be 3. There's a chance it's 3. I think in the end, there's going to be some defensive players that work their way up in the end. A lot of times you see offensive line, especially the top tackles, in a typical year fly off the board from pick 8 to 20. That's like the sweet range for those guys historically, but I could see that happen. He says, move back a few spots to get a second round pick and then take a quarterback, the late first round pick. Everything's on the table. Scott, I went back and watched Bo Nix. I get it with Bo Nix. I don't see huge upside with him. I have a big issue with his ability to hang tough in the pocket. I feel like maybe it's just a coaching emphasis for him, but like he leaves so much meat on the bone. I feel like because he's just getting rid of the ball as soon as he possibly can versus, actually climbing in space and looking to extend plays with that way in pocket. It's something that I watched a good bit of Vikings this year. I don't know why, but like watching Kirk Cousins when he was healthy, it's like, my God, he's not an athlete, but like how much time he buys within the confines of the pocket and the structure made me so envious compared to what we had with Wilson. And unfortunately with Nix, I didn't see that. He had like the lowest time to throw in the NFL or in college football, least pressures. Maybe it was a coaching emphasis. I don't know, but I need somebody who can actually, play like the Matrix within the pocket, dodging the bullets and still getting it off. But that's an ideal quarterback.
For him, what I see is really good accuracy, enough arm, good first reads. Okay, that's all good for what the Denver Broncos need right now. I think they would really like
on good first reads. Good first reads. What do you mean by that? Because I typically would say a good first read is a win for the scheme and not necessarily the quarterback.
Basically pre-snap. So You're going, okay, I see what the defense is giving me. I know where I want to go with my first read. That's what I mean, is being able to pre-snap reads, I guess would probably be a better way of putting that.
Okay.
And saying, I think he does a really good job of surveying the defense and saying, okay, I know what my first option is, and then getting that out quickly. That's all good for a Sean Payton offense. And I think he's really, really good at that, along with his intermediate to short passing accuracy. That's why I think he is the most pro-ready guy to come in and play in that to play. Now, is he going to drive the ball downfield? Is he going to stand in the pocket and again make the big play? Is he going to be an explosive play quarterback? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to be his game. But you need a hell of a lot more consistency, and that's what you're going to get in Bo Nix.
Yeah, I think he can come in and be competent. I think you're not going to get the benefit you would typically of a rookie quarterback contract because of the dead cap you have. I mean, if you look at team building, you've already allocated so much money to the quarterback spot that's going to be the dead cap hits that you need Bo Nix to be at Russell Wilson or better level, which is possible. I just don't see it with the 12th pick. With his talent, I think I'd probably rather, bring in a Jameis Winston, a Jacoby Brissett, a Jimmy Garoppolo, and then draft JJ McCarthy at 12 and hope on the upside, because I don't view taking quarterbacks, Scott, like normal baseball, just get on base by any means necessary, hit by pitch, bunt. No, I think quarterbacks for me, especially in the AFC West where you're at, I've said this before, I think it's a home run derby. I would rather flame out spectacularly and stink and then be back at the top 2 years later where I have an option versus, just being competent and stuck in purgatory with just a guy who's, an Andy Dalton quarterback who is good on that first contract. But my God, if you sign him to that $40 million a year second contract, good luck, especially against Mahomes. And that's unfortunately where I see Knicks is. I've been wrong before, right? We've all been wrong on that. That can change.
I remember one of the first things I remember you talking about when we started doing this 3 years ago was, Andy Dalton was a really good quarterback on a rookie contract. Then the second contract, he starts eating up into resources. Speaking of eating, this is Grandpa Kendell coming in. Welcome in. Thank you for the super chat. Says, hello guys. How's his little man doing?
He was a little stinky last night, unfortunately. He did not let us sleep so well, so pretty tired. I'm hoping to get off work and take a nap whenever that's over today. And unfortunately, he timed it perfectly where he needed to be fed at 4:30, and it took about 45 minutes. And then it's like, okay, I can maybe get 15 minutes of sleep, or I can get the show ready. So probably on 3 hours of sleep right now, but that's life. Some days are going to be like that. But he's doing well. It's crazy. He came in pretty small because he came in at 37 weeks, and some of his outfits are starting to not fit. It's like he keeps swimming in these, and now we're 5 weeks today, and he's expanding. So really he's eating. Cool. It's good.
It's really cool. I'm happy for y'all. I'm happy for both the Kendells here, both Papa Kendells here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Looking forward to meeting you one day. Nick, I'm looking forward to meeting you. Nick and I have never actually met face to face.
I know you want to get out here and backpack with me sometime and get lost in the mountains.
I do. And the thing is, time moves so fast for me these days. It's like, okay, I've got a 9th grader and a 7th grader. I'm like, okay, I can wait 4 years. Don't be out of the house. It's like it doesn't seem like anything. I remember when a quarter seemed like a long time in college. I'm like, ugh, it takes forever. Now it's like, 4 years. I can wait for that long before I lose my mind because they're not cleaning up the house. I'm like, whatever, I'll outlast them. Couple of good questions in here that I really liked. Zack Powers had one. He says, when we expect Russ to be released? Is it March 5th?
I think it was 5th.
Yeah, the 5th day of the new league year, which starts on March 1st. So somewhere in there, Zach, it should happen within the next month. We should hear something. And then Pearl Heater says, would Patrick Surtain be worth 2 first-round picks? Yeah, I think so. Maybe not, maybe not the Bears 1-8 or 1-9, wherever they are. But yeah, a couple of back-end guys. And, I don't want to go by the exception to the rule, because I don't know if a corner has been traded that got the haul that Jalen Ramsey got. He got a haul. Oh, you should expect to get at least that, right? Well, maybe. Well, think of what the Vikings paid for Herschel Walker. You should get that for a running back. No. These aren't all the same. But Ramsey got a huge trade when he was traded. I think it was a couple first rounders and then some.
I do think that first rounder was like pick 26. So that's a pretty low first rounder. It would take 2 26s to get up to 12, if not more, right? So I think that first pick that they got was not incredibly high for him. But yeah, I think you've had less issues with Surtain. He's a younger player, and I think that it would be the Jalen Ramsey trade plus or bust.
Was that Jaguars to the Rams?
Yes, it was.
Okay, because he's been traded since then.
Yeah, and he had a lot of issues with the Jags coming up there. So a little bit more of a problem player for Jacksonville before going to the Rams. So I wouldn't trade him for anything less.
October 2019, 2 first-round picks and a 4th is what they traded. And Surtain's more valuable than Ramsey.
I think
he's younger and he was cheap, and he was still cheaper.
And just not a headache. Not a headache.
He's more valuable. Now, can you get that We'll see. It depends on who's buying. It's, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? So again, that's we'll have to see on that one. But yeah, I think you could get 2 first-rounder picks, or at least the equivalent of, a first and 2 seconds, or whatever, somewhere in that that line, that neighborhood. Lawrence says, "Man, you guys in the morning with silver needle tea definitely hit the spot." Sounds good. I've gone through my my Lion coffee already this morning from Patrick, so glad you're hitting on that, Lawrence. We appreciate you being here with us. Thank you for the stars. There's some big boy stars today, so thank you, Lawrence. We appreciate the support that you always show the show.
And we got Phelps coming in here saying, "Don't know why, given the current state of the Broncos roster, more people aren't calling for George Payton to be let go. He has made nothing but bad decisions since he's been here as the general manager." I mean, you start to be looked down, and it's like, man, he also did that. That stunk too. I mean, I saw Randy Gregory get interviewed. I'm like, oh man, that contract really stunk for the Broncos. I mean, I guess I'm glad they didn't sign Chandler Jones, but that one stunk. Obviously, the Russell Wilson stuff, the Nathaniel Hackett firing. I mean, hiring. There's enough there that it'd be easy to say move on from him. And I know I saw an interview with Tom Pelissaro the other day talking about, like, if George Payton was moved on from, he'd be snapped up in 10 seconds. But it's not a well-kept secret that George Payton and Tom Pelissaro gets a lot of direct information from George Payton. That's one of those, who's feeding you stuff there. And Pelissaro has been an insider for George Payton stuff since the Viking days. So that's always one where it's like, okay, well, we know where this is coming from, and it's kind of fun to hear. It was interesting to hear the interview, though, too, as I think it was on, it might have been a Troy Rank. I don't remember. Somebody out there in Radio Row, not whatever, they're covering the Super Bowl down there, but you could hear a lot of stuff from Pelissaro that was like very obviously slanted from the general manager, Broncos front office side of things. But there's always multiple sides. It was fun and interesting to hear the Russell Wilson contract stuff and approaching him this season through Tom Pelissaro, which is through the Broncos front office. But worth a listen. It might Troy Rank or Andrew Mason, maybe. I don't remember who it was. I'm sorry. I wish I could give credit to who had the interview. But yeah,
and
I think George Payton.
We have. There's been my answer to this. My quick answer to this was there's been a lot of talk for George Payton to be gone. In fact, I said last year I was surprised that he was
still
retained when Sean Payton was hired.
Yep.
And then I was asked midseason, do you think he'll be the general manager come 2024? I said no. Now I'm done guessing.
Yep.
So, I still feel like I'm still surprised he's there. So, does it happen? When does it happen? Will it ever happen? But no, Phelps, I'm surprised he's the general manager of the Denver Broncos with a new guy coming in who is going to have full power. Payton may not want to stay there, was part of it. And then usually a guy wants to bring in his own guy. Kind of when we first started this, Nick, when Payton came in and had a 2-year losing coach in Vic Fangio, I was surprised that Fangio was there for a 3rd year. Usually that guy's gone as soon as a new general manager comes in. So Phelps, I'm surprised he's there. I will continue to be surprised that he's there because there's definitely enough going on to there's enough fireable mistakes in there for sure.
And I think that it's still very possible that after the draft this year, typically the front office hiring and firing cycle is different, and it's a little bit later. So after the draft this year, we'll be on George Payton firing watch. The Broncos did hire away Cody Rager to the newly created vice president of player personnel position from the Saints. That could mean nothing. That could be, starting to get your guys in here, and maybe you have a move after that. That is the conversation. But topic today, I know, Scott, you wanted to run a mock as well here, so we got to move. As far as the Broncos at 12, I think right now there are 3 positions that I think are the most probable at 12. Right now it's quarterback, of course. If you Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy fall there and you like them enough that, you're shooting your shot there and it's probably the guy that you're rolling with the next 2-3 seasons and bypassing other first-round options, then you probably take that shot. I don't know if I'm convinced enough on those quarterbacks to do that. Maybe I'm a little bit of a chicken, because the Broncos took Paxton Lynch and then didn't move up for Watson or Mahomes, didn't take Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. We had Paxton Lynch on the roster. Well, God bless. That sucks. I could talk about a sliding doors moment there for the Broncos franchise. But quarterback's 1. After that, I think it's offensive tackle, just given the talent we talked about there at the position, the conversations and rumors about Bulls potentially being gone. And the one I think that is probably outside of quarterback, the most probable, if you're staying at 12, is probably edge rusher. Why edge? Broncos need defensive tackle more. They need at some other spots more in the immediacy, but it's the second highest paid position in football. The Broncos do not have a up and coming starting caliber edge that I really feel confident. I think Benito's good niche player. You have Cooper and Browning on the final years of their contract. And the Broncos just, let's be honest, Scott, they sucked so bad at getting pressure with 4 last season. They pretty much had to become a blitz-only team to get pressure, and that's because you just didn't have enough winners up front. Contractual value, positional value, impact, edge rusher lines up for the team, even if it is a year early, because you can get by with Benito, Browning, and Cooper next season. 2 of those guys are gone. So if you like a guy enough right now, you take him. It just makes sense with where the team's at and with how roster building goes.
Yeah, I think right now you're talking about quarterback edge as far as 1 and 2 in needs, unless Garrett Bowles is gone. Then I go quarterback, offensive tackle edge as far as your needs go. So, we'll go into this kind of assuming what the team is the team, and not necessarily think that, you're planning for the future with an offensive tackle and then edge is the number 2 need. Troy coming in with a nice Broncos orange super chat. Says, thank you for the show. Is Atlanta going to take the 4th quarterback? I don't know. I really have no idea, Troy, what the Atlanta Falcons are going to do. They've basically said, we're going to explore all options. It was really funny listening to Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh and listening to Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot in Atlanta. Neither one of them mentioned the existence of Desmond Ridder. It was like he was just gone. Oh, we're going to explore every option to find our new quarterback, our next quarterback. I mean, and they never once mentioned Desmond Ridder as an option. So they're in for quarterback, Troy. But I think the Falcons, they might try and solve it before the draft. And there isn't a quarterback I really want at 8. If I was the Falcons and Raheem Morris at 8, and you're saying, okay, you have to take a quarterback, I would bet on the long term. I think Raheem Morris is a little bit more patient as far as how long it would take, to get a guy in and go. And I would go with 21-year-old JJ McCarthy over a 24-year-old Bo Nix. So I would go McCarthy in that, but I think they're going to try and explore free agency, trades. So I don't know what they're going to do really. It's going to be interesting because they're up there at 8. They've got more resources and they're in for a quarterback too. So the Atlanta Falcons are going to be a team to watch for the Denver Broncos.
Yep. All right, so let's run this simulator. Scott, you're on the back end here. I do think that there's still a chance also for the Broncos to take if you're talking 12 specifically, a cornerback or a wide receiver are also possible if they are the best player on the board. The Cooper DeJean, Natarian Arnold, Keon Mitchell, a Toledo guy, or one of those top 4 pass catchers. Maybe one of them falls and you're like, well, we need what pass catcher. I know that's a little bit more of not the initial building that you need on a team like the trenches, but you need good players at the end of the day. So we'll find somebody else elsewhere. But right now I'm with you, Scott. I think defensive tackle would be on the board. And, I've been a big Byron Murphy guy on here for a bit. I'm like, I don't understand why Byron Murphy's not higher than Johnny Newton. And all of a sudden we see that being the case in the draft community, which is cool. I don't see any of them at 12 though, Scott. I don't see that guy. I see late first round pick caliber interior defensive lineman, which is fine. But at 12 overall, I saw a mock with Byron Murphy going 11. I don't see that by any means.
Yeah, I'm already forgetting names. Jalen Carter, and who was the big dude before him from Georgia? The monster.
Oh, Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis. Yeah.
Yeah.
This would be interesting. I don't even know if I see a Jordan Davis right now.
I think Javondre Sweat can be the nose tackle because Jordan Davis had issues with.
I want Javondre Sweat in like the 3rd.
I think probably mid-3rd. Yep. Yeah. I think Jordan Davis is overdrafted though, personally. And not to be too far ahead, but I think there's 3 defensive tackles in the 2025 class that are better than any of them in this upcoming class. We have a whole year of football to watch, so that can change. But Walker at Kentucky and both Graham and Grant at Michigan. Guys to watch next year for defensive tackles. You know me. I love those DTs. So I'm already
trenches. Listen, we went over to NFLDraftBuzz.com. I kind of ran through it and I like the way it looked. It's going to be a little bit different look. And for those of you watching and listening, we'll still try and do as much audio can, but it says we're doing warp speed. We're going to go through 7 rounds. Why not? The randomness is even, and the trade value chart, we've turned trades off. Trading back for me is just way too addictive. Yep. And it's not realistic to me how easy it is. It's like, oh, move down 2 spots and pick up another 2025 first rounder. Yes, please. I end up with, 6 2025 first round picks, and that's just not realistic. So we've got trades turned off for this one. We're choosing the Broncos. We're going warp speed. We'll go random to 2, and then we hit enter chart. There we go. Enter draft, which brings up this board. And they've got Marvin Harrison Jr. as their number 1 overall pick. And then we can go to start draft. Trade. I thought I turned off trade offers. Oh, it reset. Let me reset this, y'all. I apologize. As soon as I
think maybe it's trades like everybody else trading maybe disappears.
No, as soon as I clicked on the Broncos, it reset everything up there.
Huh.
Broncos warp 7 round 2. Broncos enter draft and start draft. Yeah, see, that's better. You are on the clock. My availables are right here. They've got Latu at 7. They've got Jaden Daniels here. I mean, Jaden Daniels got skipped. Dallas Turner, Nate Wiggins, Jared Verse,
Talise Fuaga.
I mean, do we follow the board and do a mock? I mean, maybe it happens. I mean, you take Jaden Daniels here.
Can we scroll down a little bit too, just to see if there's anybody that's underappreciated? I think JC Latham is an option here. We talked about Byron Murphy just a bit ago. Terry and Arnold is very much an option here as well. I really like Amarius Mims, and you got Bo Nix.
They took Michael Penix 6 overall.
Yeah, dumb. That's not happening. Let's just pretend that Jaden Daniels is off the board here, because I know that he's available in this, but like I think it's so unlikely that it ruins the whole thing for me.
I know.
Like, I got Drake May at 12. No, you didn't. No, you did he commit a felony? No, you didn't. So I think on this one, we talked about it earlier. Edge rusher is so valuable for the Broncos. They need an edge. I'm more of the offensive-minded side of things covering this team right now. But I think that Brock Bowers going 11 is unfortunate. But I think that Dallas Turner is the pick here for me, excluding Jaden Daniels off the board. He is the most athletically gifted of the top 3 edge rushers. Latu, I just having a hard time with his athletic profile, Scott. I'm going to be honest. But Turner, I think, has the most upside value and is a 3-down player as well.
You think there's a chance in hell Sean Payton passes on a quarterback here?
Is there a chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a very good chance they pass. From some people covering the Broncos that I trust pretty well. Now Sean Payton's been a little bit tighter lips than George Payton than John Elway as well, but I think there's a pretty darn good chance the Broncos bypass quarterback. I think your quarterback move is probably going to happen free agency or trade.
Okay.
Before,
yeah, I like it. I would go Dallas. I mean, I'd go trade Jaden Daniels, but I would go Dallas Turner or I would go Bo Nix.
I think there's a conversation
just for what I think the Broncos would do. What I would do, I wouldn't want Bo Nix at 12, but I just don't know if Sean Payton's going to have the patience. I don't think he's going to embrace a rebuild and have the patience to do this, which is why you said free agency trade possibly.
He has never had a rookie quarterback. So I don't know.
Well, he hadn't had to,
Yeah. Yep. But let's go with Dallas Turner.
That doesn't feel like warp speed. Oh, we're not doing
7 rounds the speed.
No, we're not doing 7 rounds like this. That's a promise. We'll do 2 rounds. Well, we don't even have time to do 2 rounds.
So let's see what the chat says, because we
put the chat while that thing's scrolling through there.
Troy says, stop with the Bo Nix stuff. Only an idiot would take Nix at 12. There's value for Nix at 12. I totally get it, because he can be a competent quarterback. You're not an idiot. There's going to be a lot of interesting conversation. Conga says, please restart. We're going to have plenty of enough time to go over different mocks, guys. So not a big deal. But, yeah, I think the Broncos, with how it worked there, Dallas Turner, Fuaga, and Terry and Arnold are the biggest options, in my opinion. I think there is going to be a conversation more for Fuaga than we let on there, because, again, I think that the offensive line is something that it sounds like the Broncos are really looking heavily at, and Bowles might be gone. But Dallas Turner, I think, probably gone by 12, and if he's there, makes a lot of sense, because you need athletes and bodies on the defensive front. You just don't have those guys right now, and Turner might be the best one of the lot.
Yeah, again, and if I would be looking really heavily at offensive tackle, depending on what bowl. So free agency is going to tell us a lot. We're doing all of this stuff before free agency. It could change a ton
Yep.
based on what we're going to do. So I got the Broncos back up at pick 76, and you see some of the players. There's your guy. You want to get heavy right there.
I mean, I'm not against it here if the background is okay. It's unfortunate the Broncos just took Drew Sanders because Edgerrin Cooper is a hell of a player. Huge fan of him as well. Let's keep scrolling down. Malachi Corley really stands out for me here, as does
Yeah, you
Roman
could
Wilson.
bet on the upside on a guy like Johnny Wilson, who's 6'6" and change, 237 pounds, and fluid.
I think he's more of a round 4 kind of guy. There's been a lot of talk about him transferring to tight end as well. So I'm not as in on Johnny Wilson compared to the other 2 wide receivers that we saw on the list here. If you're talking quarterback, I think Spencer Rattler's in the conversation here for the Broncos. If you're talking quarterback, let's keep scrolling down a little bit. Zinter, no. Stover, no. Tyler Davis, no.
Well, we've been talking Javon Bullard. I like Tyke Smith.
Yeah.
I think he's someone to watch here in the middle for a safety. The team that needs a safety, y'all keep an eye on Tyke Smith out of Georgia.
Yeah, I think with how this board fell here, the options are either obviously Tavondre Sweat. We can go with Tavondre Sweat. That'd be a lot of fun with me. Or it would be
No, we're not doing or. We're taking Sweat.
Okay, because it would have been Corley or Roman Wilson also, and we had Corley
Yeah.
come off the board at the very next pick. So those are very talented options there for the Broncos. Broncos need to figure out how to get more picks. It's just it's rough. So pretty fun to see the Broncos. You got Dallas Turner and Tavondre Sweat. You know how long we talked about the Broncos needing to add bodies and difference
There
makers.
you go.
Well,
You just got a big influx of talent. Your first downs just changed dramatically with those 2 guys. You're hopefully you're looking at second and 9s a lot more often.
Yep. Do worry about some of the weight stuff at altitude with Sweat, but mid third round.
He's a first and second down player, and I can do that in the 3rd round. We said you can get defensive tackle if they're difference makers, then they're worth their weight in gold. Maybe even more than that, actually.
Yep.
You know, as much as people are getting paid, gold's not worth as much as what somebody weighs anymore.
Yeah, for those big guys.
Yeah, but you can get guys that can help you a lot in the interior lines of scrimmage on day 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
and there's
a lot of
Spencer
fun.
in the 4th.
Yeah, that's a great. I think that's worth a shot there. Even if he just ends up being a backup quarterback, he's got enough upside and arm. Now it's moving fast. Did you change it or?
No, it scrolls to it does a page quickly, so it's screwy.
Weird. Huh.
So it like pages down.
All right. Well, here's your Tyreek Smith. We were talking about
Tyke Smith.
Tyke, excuse me.
This would be a good spot to pick up another wide receiver also. Jordan Travis could be someone to watch here.
We took a quarterback though.
I know. I'm just saying in general, for when we're doing this, when this happens for real, that's a guy to keep an eye on as a developmental guy that might need a redshirt year. But, for a safety, do we need a safety? Yeah, we need a safety.
Special teams.
Even if you re-sign PJ Locke, I think, and depending on what you do with Simmons, but you need 3 right now. You've got 1. I can't count on Caden Stearns. And if I get Caden Stearns, then great. But I kind of like Tyke Smith here. That's not a bad spot for Utah offensive tackle. For the guys I know here, I don't know everybody here, but I haven't watched Eichenberg at linebacker. There's some people that are talking for him. Again, I just mentioned non-premium positions like inside linebacker. You can get some guys that can make a difference for you here. Safety and inside linebacker in round 4, I can get starters.
There's also a bunch of different running back options as well that could fit the mold that you're looking for with the pass catcher. Yeah, we know how much we've loved
Dejon Edwards has elite hands.
Wow, he's not even
transfers. Watching him, he's catching balls like a baseball player, like backhanding one hands out there.
Yeah, looking at the board here though for running back, there's so many guys that I still like that I probably would pass. I love Allen. I love the New Hampshire guy.
I like
Jalen
Schrader,
Wright.
Frank
Jalen
Gore.
Wright might be my favorite back in the entire
Michael
class.
Wiley has good hands too. Yeah, we don't need to take a running back yet.
And then one guy that's a really interesting option. He's a wide receiver running back option, but Tyrone Tracy from Purdue was a Shrine Bowl star. And he's, 6 foot, 210 pounds. He's really interesting. So yeah, I'm not against taking the top offensive lineman here on this one. I do need to get running though.
Layden Robinson, I like him at guard.
Let's go with Satoa.
We could go
Tyke Smith.
You want to go OL or you want to go safety?
Let's go safety because I got to get out of here because we got I got a baby appointment to get on the road to too.
All right, yeah.
I think maybe it does
way too long to get to the end here, so
it slows down.
In the first 4 rounds, we took Dallas Turner, edge, Tavondre Sweat, Spencer Rattler, and Tyke Smith. That helps a lot on defense, y'all. That's a lot. And then you take a shot. Who maybe Spencer Rattler can become something. And you get lucky.
Yeah, I mean that's again, and Jalen Wright is probably my favorite back in the class from Tennessee. If you get a chance to watch him, but a lot of fun. Talk about that. We'll figure out more of the simulator stuff as we get going. But yeah, quarterback, if not there, edge rusher and offensive tackle. Just given the value of the spots, probably where I'd cast my vote for the Broncos. So, and this is a good conversation for another day. Talking about trading for Mac Jones. I don't think you're trading Sutton for him specifically, but Mac Jones is definitely somebody to consider.
He did say in a pick, so we'll send you Mac Jones in a 4th for Sutton. No. Again, when I've talked about would you work out quarterback X? Yeah, I would. I'm not paying for him though. I'm not paying anything for Mac Jones. Would I have him come in for a cup of coffee and maybe a workout? Sure, why not? Zero risk. I like zero risk.
Day 3 pick swap. That's what we're talking about.
Would I do that with Zach Wilson? Sure. Again, a day 3 pick swap makes sense. Why not have him come in? I need to cast my net far and wide. That doesn't mean I'm paying for any of these guys, but I'd be on the lookout. I'd be scouring the earth for available quarterbacks.
Yep. Shotgun approach. Unfortunately, if you don't like a guy at 12. So appreciate everyone. Yep. Today we'll be live again on Monday. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle, as well as Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, like our show, and share on your social media platforms. Scott, one final question. We got the Michael Bronchio here. Super Bowl. I am going to go. I feel like Kansas City Chiefs are inevitable. I don't even know if I'm going to watch. I'm just so bitter right now. Natalie's like, I keep sighing around the house. And she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, the goddamn Kansas City Chiefs. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, Nick, you got to get over it. I'm like, I'm just so tired of them. So I think the Chiefs are going to win because I picked against them. I keep picking against them and I keep being wrong. So
yeah, we're going to do our best to curse them. I'm the same way. I picked the Bills. I picked the Ravens. I'm not picking against the Chiefs again. No. Their defense is keeping them in games. And if Patrick Mahomes gets hot, then they'll win.
Yep.
I think San Francisco's got the better roster, but the Chiefs have that it factor, that experience factor, and I'm not picking against the Chiefs again. So I'm going to do the best thing I can for Broncos country and pick the Chiefs.
The Chiefs have the better quarterback, and they have the better defense right now, which is crazy to say because 49ers got a pretty good line, but the Chiefs are playing better defense this season. Just is what it is. So appreciate everyone. Hopefully we're wrong. Who knows? But have a great one. Continue to choose kindness, compassion. Have a great weekend.